So last week I tried to keep my reflective short due to it being like the first week and us only looking at our project proposals. I also tried to keep it short just because I struggle to read it from a screen, and I've been using what I type up as a script for the videos. But I've also found it hard to take it in to do it all in one take without stuttering or messing up. So the takes that I use tend to be the ones that just had a better outcome overall. But I also found it ended up being more time consuming rather than just typing it up and doing nothing with it, as I'm trying to do both. But I've also realised that I can't just include parts and not include parts to make it shorter because of this. But I've also been thinking about the different ways to present my sketchbook and my critiques and reflections, just because last year when I got my sketchbook printed it did end up being cut off quite a lot just because I didn't leave enough space for the margin, so when it got bound together it ended up just being too small for you to read, so you had to like really try and open up and it ended up ripping the glue a bit. I also forgot to mention my first critique in my last video. This was mainly because I haven't wrote it up by that point. I only had it in note forms and we'd done it on the same day. But comparing this critique to last week, it was a lot more helpful as I was able to meet up with my peers. We had more of a kind of personal critique due to it being a smaller group, but not as small. As in the first week, it was, I believe, 4 or 5 of us, and we only looked at our project proposals mainly and started to generate different ideas of what we could research into to help each other in our projects. Whereas this week we went through our whole projects, what we had so far, so most of our research. My peer stated that I need to think more about my practical side of work and look at different theories, as I've not included any of yet. The one that I do have in mind is the mechanical theory, due to me producing a book as my final outcome, and that being something that would be mass produced. So it wouldn't be taken with what I've learnt from it, it wouldn't have like an original copy and it would lose value over time. But I've also seen that there's other theories such as the three key design system, which is something that I learnt from looking at my peers' work. However, for my own theory I need to make sure that it's actually relevant to what I'm doing and I'm not copying someone else's. I do need to look over my sketchbook, what I've got so far, because I need to look more into depth of what I've got, analyse it a bit more, as I feel what I've got compared to my peers isn't great. It's kind of slacking, and that I'm missing something compared, because they're writing a lot on very in-depth analysis where I've just wrote a basic paragraph. So I need to expand on my ideas and points more. Comparing my FMP to last year, I've kind of doubted myself. Last year I had a lot more work during this time frame, so for the first 2 weeks I already had double or triple the amount of research. My research was a higher quality as well, and it was all stuff that was relevant to my project, where in this one I've kind of focused more on artists, but I've not really expanded on why I've looked at I've not done artist responses, what I need to do to take it further, or really said why I want to look into them. During this week I've also gone to the London Communication College, or LCC, where I was able to see new methods of experimentation. However, due to them having different equipment to us, it's not really possible to get the same outcome. But the other outcomes that we can do, or that I can take further with me, would be the screen printing or binding. They also had a guillotine there, what was very intimidating as it was just big and loud, but it was also the ideal way of getting my book cut, as then it would all be even, there's no pages hanging out. I also learned different ways to bind books, such as the gluing way, where you stitch it together then glue it, or the staple binding that we did. I don't think it was actually staples, it was like more wires, but it ended up looking like staples. But it was like using a machine, it was like stitching. However, I think using the gluing technique would be more beneficial for a children's book, as you're able to fold completely open and flat, making it easier for the children to read, and maybe for parents to glue back together if it ever broke. I also will look into imposition folding for the next week, as it was something that was briefly mentioned during the trip. It was something that's also very important if you want to design a book, as it's the different ways the pages will come out together. I believe it is something we did in the first year of graphics, but I don't remember it as much, and I want to refresh my knowledge onto it, as I don't want to present it in the way that I would do it in InDesign for a normal sketchbook, and then for it to come out in different order and it not making sense. It also reminds me more of the fanzine design that I was introduced to last year for my outcome. So that could be something beneficial to like present my book in that way, so it's not like a traditional normal novel. I've started to do small amounts of experimentation. I've only used ink so far though, and that was to recreate different sceneries revolving around the Northern Lights in Iceland. However, they didn't turn out as well as I would have hoped. But to take these experiments further, as they are just experiments for now, I'm planning on photocopying them and using different colours, taking them onto Photoshop, trying out different ways I could play around with it, as well as maybe bleaching the originals just to see how the bleach and the ink interacts. I could use, if it turns out well and it still interacts with the ink as I'm hoping it will, I could add in buildings or maybe spirits or something, or trees or animals, just to make the scenery come more alive. But for next week, I'll be getting my primary research by using a disposable camera along with my phone and a notebook where I'll be taking sketches in of the area that I'm staying at. This will benefit me due to it being relevant research. I get to see the country firsthand, as well as use the research that I get as references, as well as experimenting with them further, such as like the photography. I could either develop it myself in the photography block if there's spaces, and then that would be like a new technique that I could take forward with me in the future. Or if not, I could go to a professional company where they'll do it for me, and then I'll be able to get a digital file from them, where if I do it in college, then I'll have to take photos of those photos. But at the same time, last time I used the professional company, I didn't get all the photos that I took. This might have been because they turned out bad or not as well as they have hoped, but it still would have been nice if they gave them all to me, just so then I'd been able to use all my photography. But once back at college, I'll be focusing heavily more on experimentations than anything of that relates to research. I'll be using as catch up at home, just so then I can use my time wisely and focus on areas that need to get done, so I can catch up with my time plan.